As Haley said, I'm going to be focusing on the spotted owl controversy. Before I get started, I just wanted to sort of take a sample to see where you guys are at with this topic. So how many people have heard of the spotted owl? Okay. Okay. How many people have heard of just the timber wars in general? Okay, right. That's what I thought. And how many people have heard of or been to Mount Rainier? Excellent. Okay, good. That's going to help give us a little context. I will apologize in advance. Hopefully I don't go over. I wasn't able to practice this as much as I normally practice most of my speeches. So I'm going to try and give the whirlwind tour of the spotted owl controversy in under 5 minutes or so. So I'm taking Jerry Franklin's Old Growth and Forest Management Policy class right now at the University of Washington. And he starts out every class by saying, forestry is a social science. Okay, why would he say that? Forestry is a social science. What I think he means by that is we don't just manage forests when we do forestry, we're actually managing people. And I'm going to explain why, because it's very much related to the spotted owl controversy. So just to start back from the very beginning, I'm going to give you this quick tour. In the early 1900s, a fellow named Gifford Pinchot, he was our first chief forester for the United States government. This is, in the 1900s, this is when the National Forest System was put together. And I asked you if you'd been to the Mount Rainier, because all around the mountain is surrounded by forests. That forest is the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, one of many forests that the government set aside as protected lands. Not just protected, actually, national forests are for logging, whereas parks are more for recreation. So that distinction came along later. Anyway, Gifford Pinchot, our first chief forester, set the stage for forestry early on. He got his training in Europe, and it was a lot like farming. You plant these like trees, they're really dense. It's not necessarily a natural forest. That's a whole other conversation. But these trees are kind of evenly spaced in some ways. They're really dense. They're all about the same age. And it was about getting as much timber as you could off the land. Gifford Pinchot said, for the good of everybody, for the longest time. It was a very utilitarian perspective, making the best use of the resources that you could. We're going to ramp things forward, so that's the general stage. Post-World War II, huge housing boom. And a need for wood. The industry ramped up its efforts significantly, still using that original idea of planting kind of as much as you could, enough for the trees to grow, but no space to waste. There's actually a little expression. So that was the idea, World War II, ramping up the efforts as quickly as possible. That continued, and the general idea was to harvest way to put it. The idea is basically to cut all of the old growth down. Harvest so that you're cutting all of the old trees away and replacing them with faster growing young trees. You keep cutting and growing because the faster they grow, the faster you can cut them and turn them into houses. Old growth trees, these people viewed them as very elaborate. They were called decadent. They took so long to grow. They were growing so slowly. They weren't efficient. They didn't fit into this model of really efficient forestry to get, wood for houses. Things got even, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. 1970. We'll go to 1970. Society started changing what it valued as being important. So around the 70s, something called the Endangered Species Act got put into place. This act is really important because it gives legal cause for why you need to manage to keep certain animals alive in the forest. There is a legal, law that says you have to maintain spotted owl, this cute owl, actually very cute. You have to maintain viable populations of this owl in the forest. You legally have to do that. If you're going to manage for the forest, you have to make sure that the owl population is going to be healthy and enough numbers. But at the same time, you're trying to pull out as much timber as you can. So this kind of tension started to emerge in the 70s. In addition to that, you had people recreating on the forest, going hiking. They got out. More people were going into the woods and looking at things. So it became very obvious that there are all these clear cuts and the owl population is going down. So this controversy kept building and building and building until about 1991, a Seattle judge made the decision when the spotted owls was put on a listing, which means that it's recognized as that species' population is going down. In 1991, Judge Dwyer said, no more logging. We are logging 11 billion board feet a year with that goal of let's get it all cut to complete stop. That's a huge change for this region. And basically ever since then, there's been this ongoing fight of how much can we cut that's allowable to maintain the spotted owl population while still meeting the legal mandate to produce wood out of the forest. So that's the controversy, that's the tension. People have been fighting about it for the last 20 years, and I guess, where are we now? We have drafted something called the Northwest Forest Plan. It's the plan that tells the Forest Service how to log the land. And right now, 75% of the forest in the Pacific Northwest is reserved, it's not being cut. It's actually a very small amount of land that is still being logged. And of that, there's been an allocation of 100 board feet. That's a measure of how much wood's coming off the land. A billion board feet. A billion board feet. It used to be 11, now it's 1 billion. And of that, only half is being cut because the other half is being taken in lawsuits by people still arguing. So theoretically, we have this billion board feet that we can harvest sustainably, according to Jerry Franklin. But the other half we can't access because there's so much social controversy over what you can and cannot cut. And so I just hopefully was able to convey very quickly the story. I just wanted to end with the same thing that I started with, that forestry is a social science. And the reason is we're not just managing forest, we're managing people. Thank you.